They dragged her into the arena as the sun rose like a burning eye above Lyon. The ground was slick with blood from the day before. Chains scraped against stone. The smell of charred flesh and iron filled the air. Thousands had gathered to watch her die. Rome called it justice. Her name was Blandina, once a slave, now a symbol of defiance. To her Roman masters, she was nothing more than a servant girl. To the authorities, she was a traitor to the gods, a pestilence infecting the empire's order. But to the terrified Christians hidden in the crowd, she was hope made flesh. It was the summer of 177 AD under the rule of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a man of philosophy, yet capable of extraordinary cruelty. The Roman world trembled at the idea of rebellion, and in Lyon, fear had turned neighbor against neighbor. Christians were accused of dark rites and cannibalism. Rumor became reason enough to kill. The arrests began quietly. Doors smashed open at dawn. Soldiers dragged entire families through the streets, their screams echoing off marble walls. The air stank of fear and sweat. Men were shackled, women were stripped and beaten. Blandina was among them, tiny, frail, trembling. No one thought she would survive even a lash. The prisons overflowed. Christians were packed together in suffocating darkness, their chains rusting into their flesh. Each day, they heard the screams from the amphitheater. Each night, they whispered prayers. When the guards passed Blandina's cell, they laughed. "That one will beg for mercy before the sun sets," they said. When the first day of the games came, the crowd poured in from all corners of the city. Merchants hawked wine, figs, and roasted meat. The amphitheater buzzed with cruel anticipation. Children climbed onto their fathers' shoulders to get a better view of the condemned. The emperor's statue loomed above, unblinking, as if blessing the slaughter. The condemned were paraded before the mob. Old men, mothers, slaves. Some were flogged, others crucified. The air filled with the roar of beasts and the groans of dying men. And then came Blandina. Her small frame seemed to mock the brutality of the spectacle. The governor sneered. "This one," he said, "will amuse us." They stripped her naked and tied her hands above her head. The iron claws were brought forth, curved like talons, forged to tear flesh from bone. Heated until they glowed red, they hissed in the air. Then the first strike came. A wet, sickening rip. The crowd gasped. Blood ran down her arms. She did not scream. Her lips moved in silent prayer. The executioner struck again, harder. Flesh peeled from her ribs. The smell of blood mingled with hot metal. The torturer hesitated. She still hadn't begged. He drove the claws into her sides, tearing deep. The crowd roared for more. Her body hung limp, blood pooling beneath her feet, yet her eyes, glazed with pain, remained open. She whispered words none could hear, perhaps not even she. Her tormentors stopped, exhausted and unnerved. "Why does she not break?" one murmured. The governor, red-faced, demanded they continue until her spirit cracked. They beat her with rods until her back split open. They burned her with torches, pressed searing iron against her flesh, but the only sound was her labored breathing. The crowd that had once cheered grew strangely quiet. There was something unnerving about her endurance, something almost divine. Night fell and Blandina was thrown back into her cell among the dying. The others crawled to her, astonished she was still alive. "I am happy," she whispered through cracked lips. "I have suffered for what I believe." Even the guards avoided her eyes as they slammed the cell shut. At dawn, she was dragged out again. Her wounds had barely clotted. The amphitheater was full once more. Blood called for blood. This time, the governor ordered her tied to a wooden post as bait for wild beasts. A massive bull, its horns capped with bronze, was released into the ring. The bull charged. The impact lifted her from the ground. Bones shattered. Blood sprayed across the sand. The crowd gasped. She hit the earth with a dull crack, still breathing, still praying. The governor gritted his teeth and ordered another charge. The beast gored her side and flung her limp body high. She fell like a broken doll. When she didn't die, panic began to ripple through the stands. The Romans believed in omens, and this woman's survival felt unnatural. Some whispered that the gods were angry, others swore she was protected by something beyond human. Her torturers hesitated, waiting for a command. "End it," the governor snarled. "Now." The executioner approached, blade trembling. Blandina raised her head, blood dripping from her chin. Her lips formed a final prayer. The knife flashed. Her body went still. And for the first time that day, silence fell over the crowd. Her broken form was left tied to the post as the sun dipped below the horizon. Dogs were released into the arena to devour the bodies, but they would not touch hers. For 2 days, her corpse remained untouched. Even the beasts refused. To the Romans, it was superstition. To her followers, it was proof. Word of her death spread far beyond Lyon. In secret, Christians wrote her name on scraps of parchment, whispering her story in candlelight. The empire that sought to erase her had instead immortalized her. Blandina, the slave who withstood the full cruelty of Rome and did not break. Years later, those who survived the persecution still spoke of her as a saint, a woman who endured everything a human body could bear and never once begged for mercy. Her story spread across the centuries, told and retold in catacombs, chapels, and whispered prayers of the condemned. And even now, her death forces us to ask, what does it mean to endure? How much agony can a single soul contain before it shatters? Would you have held firm as she did when faced with the claws, the fire, and the beast? Or would you have bowed to save your life? She died believing the spirit could not be destroyed by flesh, and perhaps, in some cruel way, Rome proved her right. The empire that tortured her is gone, but her name, Blandina, endures, carved into the memory of human defiance. If you thought this was horrifying, wait until you hear about the man flayed alive for his loyalty. Hanged and beheaded. The execution of Guy Fawkes. London, 1606.